That sounds like an intense and gripping story. However, 10,000 words is quite long for an introduction. A strong YouTube video intro is usually concise, ideally within a few hundred words to hook the audience quickly. I can craft a compelling and suspenseful introduction that sets the tone, builds intrigue, and leaves viewers eager to watch the full story. Let me know if you'd like a more extended setup or a different approach. Here's your introduction. The hospital hallways smelled of antiseptic and carried the hushed whispers of grieving families. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the day she would finally hold her baby in her arms. But instead, Sophia lay weak and trembling, her world collapsing around her as the doctor delivered the unthinkable news. "I'm so sorry. Your baby didn't make it." Her breath hitched. It felt like someone had ripped the air from her lungs, leaving her in an empty, suffocating void. She barely registered the words being spoken around her. The condolences, the apologies, the empty reassurances that did nothing to fill the gaping hole in her heart. Her baby, gone, just like that. Tears blurred her vision as she turned to her husband, Ethan, whose face was pale with shock. His hand gripped hers, but he was just as lost, just as broken. The doctors offered no explanation beyond medical complications, no real answers, just the finality of loss. A loss that Sophia wasn't ready to accept. Hours passed, maybe more. Time had lost meaning. All she knew was the unbearable ache in her chest, the weight of her body sinking deeper into the hospital bed. But then something inside her stirred, a need, an instinct she couldn't ignore. She had to see her baby. She pleaded, begged the nurse to take her to the morgue, to let her hold her child, even if just for a moment. At first, they refused. It wasn't protocol, they said. It wasn't necessary. But Sophia wasn't leaving without seeing her baby one last time. Finally, after relentless insistence, they agreed. A nurse guided her down the dimly lit hallways, each step heavier than the last. The cold, sterile scent of the morgue sent a shiver through her, but she pushed forward. Then she saw him, the doctor. His back was turned, his movements hurried, almost frantic. But as Sophia stepped closer, her breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded, because what she saw next made her forget how to breathe. Something wasn't right, and in that moment, she realized her baby's story wasn't over. Not yet. Sophia's breath felt trapped in her chest as she stood frozen in the doorway. The morgue was colder than she had imagined, the air thick with a sterile chill that made her skin prickle. But none of that mattered. Her eyes were locked on the doctor, the very same one who had delivered the devastating news just hours ago. His white coat looked almost gray under the dim overhead light, and his hands moved quickly, too quickly, over the small, lifeless body lying on the metal table. Her baby. Sophia's heart slammed against her ribs. What was he doing? Her fingers gripped the edge of the door frame, her nails digging into the cold metal. She wanted to speak, to demand an explanation, but her voice wouldn't come. The doctor hadn't noticed her yet. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted something on the baby's tiny form. His posture was tense, his movements urgent. It didn't make sense. Why was he still here? Why wasn't her child resting peacefully, like they had told her? A sharp creak echoed in the quiet room as Sophia took a step inside. The sound made the doctor whip around, his face pale, his eyes wide with something she couldn't quite place, shock, guilt, or something else entirely. "Mrs. Carter," he stammered, his voice strained. You shouldn't be here." Sophia swallowed hard, her throat burning with the effort to keep steady. "I asked to see my baby," she whispered, her voice raw. "Why are you still?" The doctor hesitated. A flicker of something crossed his face before he quickly masked it with a forced calmness. "I was just making sure everything was in order." Something about the way he said it sent another wave of unease through Sophia. It was the same voice he had used earlier, when he told her there was nothing they could do. The same voice that had delivered the news that shattered her world. She took another step forward, her legs weak but determined. Her eyes flicked down to the small form on the table. Her baby. She had barely gotten to hold them. And now, here they were, looking so fragile, so still. But then she noticed something. The blanket wrapped around the tiny body was slightly askew, revealing a tiny hand, soft, delicate, and warm. Sophia's breath hitched. No, that wasn't possible. It had to be in her head, a trick of her grief-stricken mind. But the more she stared, the more she felt it. A strange, lingering warmth that shouldn't be there. Her gaze snapped back up to the doctor, who had gone rigid. "Step away," she said barely above a whisper. The doctor hesitated. "Mrs. Carter, I know this is difficult, but—" "Step away." Her voice cracked through the air, trembling with a mix of fear and something else, hope. A desperate, fragile hope she couldn't afford to believe in. The doctor exhaled sharply and took a slow step back, his hands still hovering uncertainly. Sophia reached out, her fingers trembling as they made contact with the small hand. And the second her skin touched her baby's, a jolt ran through her, a spark of something real, something undeniable. Warmth, softness, the faintest twitch. Sophia gasped and staggered back, her head spinning. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. She looked at the doctor, expecting him to be as shocked as she was, but instead, he looked terrified, like he had been caught. A million thoughts crashed through her mind at once. Had there been a mistake? Was her baby alive? Had they been alive this whole time? Her stomach twisted violently. If that was true, then why? Why had they told her otherwise? Why had they let her believe she had lost everything? She opened her mouth to demand answers. But before she could speak, the doctor took a sudden step toward her, his expression shifting from fear to something unreadable. "Mrs. Carter," he said quietly, his voice low and urgent. "Listen to me very carefully. You need to leave. Now." Sophia's blood turned to ice. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The doctor glanced toward the door, his jaw tight. "Because if you don't, you're going to regret it." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. This wasn't just about a mistake. This wasn't just medical error. Something was very, very wrong, and she was about to find out what. Sophia's entire body tensed as the doctor's words hung thick in the cold air. Regret it? What did that even mean? Her fingers trembled as she clutched the blanket around her baby's tiny hand, still feeling the warmth beneath her touch. Every fiber of her being screamed that something was terribly wrong. She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me the truth. What's happening?" The doctor's jaw tightened, his eyes darting toward the door, as if expecting someone to walk in at any moment. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, his breathing uneven. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You need to trust me and walk away." Sophia let out a shaky breath. Walk away? After everything? No. She wasn't leaving without answers. She took a step forward, refusing to let the panic rise in her chest. "Is my baby alive?" The words cracked as they left her lips, because she wasn't sure she could handle the answer. The doctor hesitated, just long enough for her to know the truth. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. "Oh my God," she whispered, pressing a hand against her mouth. How? How could this happen?" The doctor's face contorted, his expression a mix of regret and something else, fear. Real, unshakable fear. "There are things you don't know," he said finally. "Things I can't explain right now." Sophia's chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. None of this made sense. The hospital was supposed to be a place of healing, a place where lives were saved, not stolen. But this was something else. The air between them grew thick with tension, neither willing to break it. Then, before she could process her next move, the doctor reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "Take this," he murmured, shoving it into her palm. "And don't open it here. If you want answers, go home. But for now," he swallowed hard, stepping closer. "You were never here. Do you understand?" Sophia stared at him, her fingers tightening around the note. Her pulse roared in her ears. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I don't understand any of this." The doctor exhaled sharply, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite place. Then, without another word, he turned, pulled the white sheet back over her baby's still form, and walked past her, his footsteps fading down the long, empty hallway. Sophia stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. The only thing anchoring her to reality was the crumpled paper burning against her palm. She needed to get out of here. Her legs felt heavy as she forced herself to move. She stole one last glance at the covered body on the table before backing toward the door. A part of her wanted to rip the sheet away, to scoop her child into her arms and never let go. But something about the doctor's warning rooted her in place. Not yet. She slipped out of the morgue and into the dimly lit hallway, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The hospital felt different now, too quiet, too hollow. Had it always been like this? Or was it just her, now seeing the cracks in the walls, the shadows that shouldn't be there? Her fingers clenched around the note as she hurried past the empty nurse's station, avoiding eye contact with anyone she passed. Every step felt heavier, like the weight of what she had just witnessed was pressing down on her. By the time she reached the elevator, her hands were slick with sweat. She jammed her finger against the button, her pulse drumming loudly in her ears. The door slid open with a quiet ding, and she stepped inside, pressing herself against the cold metal wall. She needed to see Ethan. The thought of her husband waiting upstairs, grieving, oblivious to everything that had just happened, made her stomach twist. How was she supposed to tell him? How could she even begin to explain? Her fingers loosened around the note just enough to peek at the jagged handwriting scrawled across the paper. An address. That was it. No name, no explanation. Just a single location scribbled in frantic strokes. The elevator doors slid open, and she barely registered stepping out into the hallway. She needed air, needed to get out of this hospital, away from its walls that now felt suffocating. Her feet carried her past the waiting area, where Ethan sat hunched over, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. The sight of him, so lost, so broken, nearly undid her. She stopped in front of him, her breath hitching. Ethan, his head snapped up, his eyes bloodshot, his face pale. Sophia. His voice was hoarse, full of disbelief. Where did you go? She swallowed hard, her heart hammering. We need to go home. Ethan blinked, confusion flashing across his face. What? Sophia, what are you talking about? What's going on? She didn't answer. She couldn't, not here. Instead, she reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Please, she whispered, her voice desperate. Just come with me. Ethan hesitated, but something in her eyes must have told him this wasn't a conversation for the middle of a hospital. He exhaled sharply, nodding. Okay. Together, they walked through the automatic doors and into the cold night air. Sophia didn't look back, but as they stepped into the car, the papers still clutched in her palm, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The car ride home was filled with silence, but not the comfortable kind, the kind that sat between them like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. Sophia could feel Ethan's eyes on her every few seconds, searching for answers she wasn't ready to give. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the crumpled piece of paper in her lap, the address etched in her mind like a brand. Ethan finally broke the silence. Sophia, you're scaring me? His voice was low, edged with concern. You disappeared, and now you won't even tell me what's going on. She exhaled shakily, staring out the window. The streetlights blurred past, their glow stretching and fading into the darkness. How could she even put it into words? That their child, the one they had mourned, might not be gone? That something far more terrifying was happening beneath the surface? She swallowed hard, gripping the note even tighter. I need you to trust me. Ethan let out a heavy breath, rubbing a hand over his face. Of course I trust you, but you have to give me something. Anything. Sophia hesitated, her heart thudding painfully. I saw the doctor, she admitted finally. In the morgue. He was acting strange. Ethan stiffened beside her. What do you mean? Strange? She opened her mouth, then closed it. How could she explain the feeling that had settled deep in her bones? The way the doctor had looked at her with something so close to fear. How could she tell Ethan that their baby's skin hadn't been cold, that there had been a flicker of warmth where there should have been none? I don't know, she whispered. But something isn't right. Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He didn't press her further, but the tension between them thickened. When they finally pulled into their driveway, Sophia barely waited for the car to stop before she was unbuckling her seatbelt. She needed space, needed a moment to breathe. But the second she stepped out, a cold shiver ran down her spine. She turned, scanning the street, the darkened houses, the empty road. Nothing. And yet, the feeling didn't go away. The same eerie sensation she'd felt at the hospital. Like someone was watching. Ethan came up beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. "Come inside," he said softly. She nodded, pushing down the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. Once inside, the house felt eerily quiet. The kind of quiet that made every small noise seem louder. Every shadow seemed deeper. Sophia stood in the entryway, gripping the note in her hand, her mind racing. Ethan watched her carefully. "That paper," he said. "What is it?" Sophia hesitated, then slowly unfolded it. She handed it to him without a word. Ethan's brows furrowed as he scanned the address. "What is this?" "I don't know," she admitted. "The doctor gave it to me. He told me if I wanted answers, I had to go there." Ethan stared at the note for a long moment, then looked back at her. "Sophia, this is insane. What if this is some kind of sick joke?" Sophia shook her head. "It's not." He was scared, Ethan. He wanted me to leave before someone else came. He was hiding something. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "And you think going to some random address in the middle of the night is a good idea?" "No," she admitted. "But I have to." Ethan looked at her, something flickering in his expression. Hesitation, fear, frustration. But beneath it all, there was understanding. Sophia stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "Please," she whispered. "I need to know." A beat passed, then another. Finally, Ethan sighed, shaking his head. "I can't let you do this alone." Sophia's chest tightened with relief. They didn't wait. The drive was tense, the city growing quieter as they moved further from home. The address led them outside the city limits, down roads that became narrower, darker, lined with tall trees that seemed to close in on them. Ethan glanced at the GPS, his grip tightening on the wheel. "Where the hell is this taking us?" Sophia's pulse quickened. The road stretched endlessly before them, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Then, finally, the GPS beeped. They had arrived. Ethan slowed the car to a stop. Before them stood an old building, half hidden by trees, its windows dark and lifeless. The air was thick with silence, the kind that felt unnatural. Wrong. Sophia swallowed hard. Something was here. Something they weren't supposed to find. Ethan turned to her. "Are you sure about this?" Sophia took a shaky breath. "No." But she opened the door anyway. The night air was thick, heavy with an unsettling quiet that made Sophia's skin prickle. She stepped out of the car, her heart pounding so loudly she swore Ethan could hear it. The building loomed ahead of them, its walls old and weathered, the windows dark like empty eyes staring back at them. It didn't look like a hospital or a clinic. Nothing about it seemed medical at all. Ethan shut his car door softly, his breath visible in the cold air. "Sophia, this doesn't feel right." She swallowed hard, gripping the note in her pocket. "I know." But still, she moved forward. With every step toward the entrance, a weight settled heavier in her chest. This place was abandoned, or at least it was supposed to be. Yet something felt occupied, a presence unseen, but undeniably there. Ethan grabbed her arm gently. "We shouldn't be here." Before she could respond, a sound sliced through the silence, a faint shuffling, coming from inside the building. Both of them froze. Sophia's pulse skyrocketed. Someone was in there. Ethan's fingers tightened around her wrist. "We're leaving. Now." But before they could turn back, the door creaked open. Just a sliver. Just enough for the darkness inside to spill out toward them. Sophia sucked in a sharp breath. She couldn't see anyone, but the door hadn't opened on its own. Ethan pulled her back a step, his jaw clenched. "Sophia, we need to go. Right now." She should have listened. She knew that. But something inside her wouldn't let her leave. Not yet. With slow, careful movements, she pushed the door open wider. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and something else, something metallic. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were lined with old medical equipment, rusted and long forgotten. Ethan exhaled sharply beside her. This place is a nightmare. Sophia barely heard him. Her attention was drawn to something further down the hall, a door, slightly ajar, with a faint glow spilling from within. She stepped forward before she could second-guess herself. Ethan cursed under his breath, but followed. This is insane. They moved slowly, their footsteps barely making a sound against the dusty floor. Every instinct in Sophia's body screamed at her to run, but something stronger, something desperate, kept her moving forward. As they reached the door, another sound made them freeze. A voice, muffled low, and coming from the other side. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Ethan gave her a sharp look. "Someone's in there?" She nodded, her fingers curling into fists. Whoever it was, they had to be connected to all of this. To the doctor, to her baby. To the impossible truth she was beginning to believe. With a shaking hand, she reached for the door and pushed it open. The room inside was small, lit by a single, flickering fluorescent light. A desk sat in the corner, covered in scattered papers, medical files, and, Sophia's stomach twisted, a row of tiny hospital bracelets. She stepped closer, her breath catching as she recognized a name on one of them. Her baby's name. Her vision blurred as she reached out, her fingers brushing against the plastic. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about her child. There were more names, more bracelets, more babies. Ethan grabbed one, his face pale. "Sophia, what is this?" A rustling sound made them both spin around. And then they saw him. A man stood in the shadows of the room, half hidden by a shelf stacked with old medical supplies. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow and sunken. But there was something disturbingly familiar about him. Sophia's heart stopped. It was the doctor, but not the same man who had spoken to her in the morgue. This doctor looked different, older, more desperate, and when he stepped into the light, his voice barely above a whisper, Sophia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "You shouldn't have come here." Sophia's breath hitched as she locked eyes with the doctor. His face was pale, his features lined with something deeper than exhaustion, guilt, fear, and something else she couldn't name. He took a slow step forward, his hands raised as if to show he meant no harm. Ethan moved in front of her instinctively. "Who are you?" His voice was firm, steady, but Sophia could hear the tension beneath it. The doctor exhaled shakily. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. Sophia took a step around Ethan, her hands clenched into fists. "Try me?" The doctor hesitated, glancing toward the desk where the baby bracelets lay scattered. His eyes darkened. "I never wanted any of this," he muttered. "I tried to stop it." Sophia's stomach twisted. "Stop what?" The doctor swallowed hard. "The hospital, it's not what you think. Some babies. Your baby, they were never supposed to die." The room tilted. Sophia's fingers dug into the edge of the desk. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled. Ethan's eyes darted between them. "Are you saying our baby was taken?" The doctor nodded slowly. "Not just yours. Many others." He gestured toward the bracelets. "The hospital declared them dead, but they weren't. They were taken somewhere else." Sophia's knees nearly gave out. "Where?" The doctor hesitated, then whispered, "For research." The words sent ice through her veins. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're lying?" "I wish I were," the doctor murmured. "I found out too late. I tried to save some, but I couldn't stop them all." Sophia shook her head, her breath coming in short gasps. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would they do that?" The doctor's eyes darkened. "Money, power, control." He took another step forward. "But your baby, your child, wasn't taken like the others." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. "What do you mean?" The doctor hesitated. "Your baby survived. But they weren't supposed to." Ethan grabbed Sophia's hand, grounding her, but her mind was spinning. "Where's my baby?" she demanded. The doctor looked at her, pain etched in his features. "Hidden?" Sophia's pulse roared in her ears. "Where?" Before he could answer, a loud noise echoed through the building. footsteps. Heavy, purposeful, coming straight toward them. The doctor's face went white. "They found us." Sophia's breath caught. "Who?" The doctor turned, grabbing a stack of papers from the desk and shoving them into Sophia's hands. "Take this. Run. Now." Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled Sophia toward the door, but she was frozen, clutching the papers, her mind screaming. "My baby! I'll find you," the doctor hissed. "But if you stay, you'll never see them again. Go!" The footsteps grew louder. Ethan yanked her hand. "Sophia, we have to go." With one last look at the doctor, she turned and ran. The cold night air hit her like a slap as they burst through the doors, sprinting toward the car. Behind them, voices shouted, but she didn't dare look back. Ethan fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. The engine roared to life, and the tires screeched as they sped down the dark road, leaving the building and the nightmare behind. Sophia clutched the papers to her chest, her heart pounding. Somewhere in those pages, the truth was waiting. And so was her baby. Sophia's hands shook as she gripped the stack of papers, her breath coming in short gasps. The car sped down the empty road, darkness stretching endlessly around them. Ethan kept glancing at her, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Sophia, talk to me." His voice was strained, filled with fear and urgency. She could barely process what had just happened. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Her baby was alive. Hidden. Taken. None of this felt real, but the weight of the papers in her lap told her otherwise. She fumbled to flip through them, her fingers trembling as she scanned pages filled with medical records, signatures, dates. It was all here, the proof. Names of babies declared dead but never buried. Transfers to unknown locations. And then, her baby's name. Sophia gasped, tracing the letters with her fingertip. "Ethan," she whispered. "It's here. Our baby's name." Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened. "What does it say? Where did they take them?" She scanned the document, her pulse racing. "There's an address," she murmured. "A different facility. Not the hospital." Ethan didn't hesitate. "We're going there?" Sophia nodded, her stomach twisting in knots. Every part of her was terrified of what they would find. But she had come too far to stop now. The drive felt endless, each second stretching painfully. Sophia clutched the papers, her mind racing through every possibility. Would they find their child? Would it be too late? Finally, they reached the location, an unmarked building, smaller than she expected, with no signs or markings. It looked abandoned, but after everything they had seen, she knew better. Ethan parked a short distance away. "Stay here," he said firmly. Sophia shook her head. "No, I need to see." He exhaled sharply, but didn't argue. They stepped out together, moving cautiously toward the entrance. The door was locked, but Ethan found a side window slightly ajar. He pushed it open and helped Sophia climb through before following behind. Inside, the air was thick, musty. The hallway was dimly lit, lined with closed doors. The place was eerily silent. Sophia's heart pounded as she moved forward. She didn't know where to go, but something, maybe instinct, pulled her down the hall. Then she heard it, a faint sound, a cry. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Ethan," she whispered, "did you hear that?" He nodded, his body tense. "Which room?" She moved toward the sound, her pulse roaring in her ears. The crying was soft but steady, growing clearer with each step. She stopped in front of a door, her hand hovering over the handle. For a moment, fear gripped her. What if this wasn't real? What if she was wrong? Ethan placed his hand over hers, his eyes filled with silent reassurance. She swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The room was small, dimly lit, with a single crib in the center. And inside, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, was a tiny baby. Sophia's breath left her in a rush. Her legs nearly gave out, but she forced herself forward. The baby stirred, letting out another soft cry. Sophia reached out with trembling hands, gently lifting the small, warm body into her arms. The moment their skin touched, something inside her shattered. She knew without a doubt, this was her baby. Tears blurred her vision as she cradled the child against her chest, her heart bursting with emotions too strong to name. "Oh my God," she sobbed. "It's you." Ethan stood beside her, his own eyes wet as he looked down at them. "Sophia," his voice broke. Sophia pressed a soft kiss to the baby's forehead, her body shaking with relief, disbelief, and overwhelming love. They had been lied to, manipulated, broken by grief, but now, against all odds, they had found their child. But they weren't safe yet. Ethan touched her arm gently. "We have to go?" Sophia nodded, holding the baby close as they turned back toward the hallway. But before they could take another step, a figure appeared in the doorway. The doctor. His chest was rising and falling rapidly, his face pale. "You have to leave," he said urgently. "Now." Ethan tensed. "Are they coming?" The doctor nodded. "They know you're here." Sophia's arms tightened protectively around the baby. "What about the others?" Her voice was desperate. "The other children?" The doctor looked pained. "I'll get them out," he swore. "But you have to go before they catch you. They won't let you leave with the child." Ethan hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Come on." Sophia cast one last look at the doctor. She didn't know if she could trust him, but he had led them here. He had given her this chance. "Please," she whispered. "Save them." The doctor gave a tight nod before stepping aside, allowing them to slip past him. Ethan led the way, moving quickly but carefully, checking every corner before they hurried down the hallway. Sophia's heart pounded with every step. The moment they reached the exit, they heard voices, shouts coming from deeper inside the building. They didn't have much time. Ethan pushed the door open, and they rushed into the night. The car was only a few feet away. Sophia ran, her breath ragged, holding the baby as close as she could. They climbed in, and Ethan started the engine. Headlights flashed in the distance, another car speeding toward them. Ethan floored the gas. The tires screeched as they shot forward, the night swallowing them whole. Sophia didn't look back. She couldn't. She focused on the warmth of the baby in her arms, the steady rise and fall of tiny breaths. Tears streamed down her face, but this time, they weren't from sorrow. They had made it. They were free. As the city lights came into view, the weight in her chest finally eased. There would be questions, investigations. The fight wasn't over. But for now, she had her child, and that was all that mattered.